Hey guys, tonight we sail across the vast Pacific, where the ocean stretches like a dark, endless dream under a dome of glittering stars. You're perched on the edge of a double-hull canoe, the wood creaking beneath you, salt spray kissing your face as waves slap the hull. The air hums with possibility, but let's be real, you probably won't survive this journey without a nap first. Polynesian navigators centuries ago didn't just sail, they danced with the cosmos, reading the sky like a map to find islands no bigger than a speck. This is their story, forgotten heroes who made GPS look like child's play. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're out there bobbing on the Pacific, and it's not just water, it's a living thing, whispering secrets if you know how to listen. Polynesian navigators, from maybe 3,000 years ago, didn't have compasses or charts. They had the stars. Mainstream history tells us they sailed from Southeast Asia, spreading across islands like Hawaii, New Zealand, and Easter Island, covering millions of square miles. That's not a weekend road trip. It's a mind-boggling feat. You tilt your head back, and the Milky Way sprawls above a glowing river. Navigators memorize star paths, lines connecting stars that rise and set like cosmic breadcrumbs. Orion's belt points one way, the Southern Cross another. Miss a star, and you're adrift, no land for weeks. Kinda makes your phone's map app feel a bit fragile. Huh? But here's the quirky bit. Some navigators claimed they could feel the ocean's pulse. Not just waves, but deep currents, like the Earth's heartbeat. Elders spoke of lying on the canoe's deck, eyes closed, sensing swells to know their direction. Sounds like something your yoga instructor might try, but these folks bet their lives on it. Historians still argue whether this was skill or superstition. Could you really feel your way to Fiji? Yet the proof's in the pudding. They found islands smaller than your hometown, no Google required. You're swaying with the canoe now, the horizon a thin line between sea and sky. Navigators didn't just follow stars, they were storytellers, weaving myths into their routes. The Pleiades, those 7 twinkling sisters, weren't just pretty. They marked planting seasons and safe sailing times. You imagine a navigator pointing upward, saying, "When those ladies rise, we go." It's poetic, sure, but also hardcore science wrapped in stories. You're starting to get why these sailors didn't need Wi-Fi. They had the universe. The canoe rocks gently, and you notice the crew's quiet focus. No one's yelling "land ho" like in pirate movies. Instead, they're watching the sky, counting stars like you count sheep. A navigator's training took years, think Navy SEALs, but with more stargazing. Kids as young as 10 memorized hundreds of star paths, plus wind patterns and wave shapes. Forget flashcards, this was life or death homework. You chuckle, imagining your old history teacher trying to keep up. Pop quiz, find Tahiti or starve. Yeah, you'd have flunked. As you drift, the stars seem closer, like they're whispering. Navigators used star compasses, mental maps dividing the horizon into 32 points, each tied to a star's rising or setting. You try picturing it. North isn't just up, it's where Arcturus climbs. It's dizzying, but they nailed it. The canoe's sails catch a breeze, and you feel the pull forward. Somewhere out there, an island waits. You're not just sailing, you're chasing a legacy, one star at a time. Mainstream history confirms Polynesians colonized the Pacific in waves, starting around 1000 BCE, hopping from island to island like cosmic stepping stones. They didn't just stumble on places like Samoa or Tonga. They planned it, using knowledge passed down through generations. You're picturing a navigator now, eyes half closed, feeling the swell of the sea. Their maps weren't drawn, they were memorized, a living library of ocean patterns. You try imagining it. Every wave has a shape, a rhythm, like a song. Long, rolling swells from a distant storm mean you're near the equator. Short, choppy ones? Maybe an island's close, bouncing waves back. It's like the ocean's texting you directions, if you know the code. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators use their bodies as tools. They'd sit cross-legged, feeling the canoes roll through their hips, or, get this, sense waves through their stomachs. Yeah, you heard that right. Lie flat, tummy down, and the sea's vibrations tell you where land might be. Sounds like something your weird uncle might try at a family picnic, but it worked. Historians still argue whether this was genius or just luck. Could you really navigate by nausea? Yet, they hit tiny atolls dead on. So maybe your stomach's smarter than you think. You're swaying with the canoe now, trying to feel those waves yourself. Navigators studied wind, too. Not just its breezy wind, but specific gusts with names, like old friends. The trade winds, steady from the east, were your highway. A sudden shift might mean land's near, bending the breeze. You sniff the air, half expecting to smell palm trees, but it's just salt and hope. These sailors memorize dozens of wind patterns, plus cloud shapes. Puffy cumulus might hover over an island, reflecting green from hidden lagoons. It's like the sky's dropping hints, but only if you're paying attention. You chuckle, thinking of your weather app, which can't even predict tomorrow's rain. These navigators were meteorologists, astronomers, and poets rolled into one. They'd watch for sea marks, too, natural signs like driftwood or seaweed clumps. Spot a floating coconut? Might mean an island's upwind. You're starting to see the ocean as they did. Not empty, but alive, every ripple a clue. It's overwhelming, but also weirdly calming, like solving a puzzle in your sleep. The crew's quiet, pointing at a low star on the horizon. You're learning their secret. Navigation wasn't just skill, it was trust. Trust in the stars, the waves, the stories. They'd sing chants to recall routes, each verse a memory of an island's location. You hum to yourself, wondering what your playlist would say about your life. Lost in traffic, again? Not these folks. Their songs were maps, their voices compasses. You're drifting deeper now, the canoe rocking like a cradle. The ocean's not so scary when you know its language, right? You're still gliding on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific cradling you as stars burned bright overhead. The hulls sliced through the water, steady and strong, like they're whispering, "We've got this." You run your hand along the worn wood, feeling the grain smoothed by countless voyages. These canoes weren't just boats. They were lifelines, built to tame an ocean that doesn't play nice. You're about to learn why these vessels were the unsung heroes of Polynesian navigation, carrying entire communities across waves that could swallow your hometown whole. Buckle up, or, well, lash yourself to the mast, because this ride's about to get real. Mainstream history notes that Polynesian double-hulled canoes, called wae kalua in Hawaiian, were engineering marvels, some stretching 60 feet long and carrying dozens of people, plus pigs, plants, and hope for new homes. By 1000 CE, these canoes connected islands thousands of miles apart, from Tahiti to Hawaii. You're sitting in one now, marveling at its design. Two hulls, lashed together with coconut fiber ropes, give it stability, like catamarans your rich cousin might rent, but tougher. The sails, woven from pandanus leaves, catch the trade winds, pulling you forward. You grin, imagining trying to pitch this to a modern shipyard. No metal, just vibes and rope. Good luck. Here's the quirky bit. Some canoes had spirit seats, carved spots where ancestor spirits supposedly rode along. Navigators would whisper to them, asking for luck. You glance at the empty seat beside you, half expecting a ghostly high five. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual or psychological. Did the ancestors really help, or was it just a mental boost? Either way, you're not arguing with sailors who crossed oceans without a lifeboat. You lean back, feeling the canoe's rhythm. Building one took a village, literally. Men felled massive koa trees, women wove sails, kids hauled ropes. The whole community poured their souls into it, chanting as they worked. You picture it. Drums thumping, voices rising, everyone knowing this canoe might carry their kids to a new island. It's not just wood and rope, it's a promise. You try lifting a paddle, yep, heavy. And imagine weeks at sea, arms burning, no gym membership required. These canoes carried taro, breadfruit, even chickens clucking in cages. You chuckle, wondering how you'd handle a seasick pig on your lap. The waves grow choppy, testing the canoe's strength. You grip the edge, noticing how the hulls flex, but don't break. The lashings creak, absorbing shocks like ancient shock absorbers. Navigators plan for this, building canoes to bend with the sea, not fight it. You're impressed, but also a bit nervous. Nobody's bailing water yet, right? The crew's calm, though, pointing at a star to steer. They know this canoe's their home, their shield. Some had platforms for sleeping, cooking, even fishing mid-voyage. You imagine flipping fish onto a tiny grill, the original surf and turf. You're starting to love this canoe, quirks and all. It's not fast, maybe 5 knots, but it's relentless, like a stubborn grandma who won't quit. The double hulls keep it upright, even when waves play dirty. You think back to those mental maps from earlier, how navigators paired their knowledge with these vessels. Stars above, canoe below, and you in the middle, trusting both. It's humbling, making your car's navigation system feel like a toddler's toy. As the canoe glides on, you settle in, the stars winking like they're proud. This vessel's more than wood, it's a story, carrying you closer to land, one wave at a time. You're nestled in that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific rocking you gently as the stars above twinkle like they're spilling secrets. The air's warm, a soft breeze tugging at the pandanus sails, and you're staring at the sky, trying to make sense of it all. Those Polynesian navigators didn't just glance at the stars. They read them like you'd read a book, each constellation a sentence, guiding them to islands lost in the ocean's vastness. You're about to dive into their celestial playbook, decoding the sky as a compass that never fails, unless you oversleep and miss the sunrise. Let's see if you can keep up. Mainstream history tells us Polynesians used a star compass system, dividing the horizon into 32 points based on where stars rise and set. By 500 CE, they were sailing from Fiji to Hawaii, using this mental grid to nail distances of over 2,000 miles. You tilt your head, spotting a bright star, maybe Arcturus, climbing the eastern sky. Navigators didn't just know its name, they knew it marked northwest when it rose. You try picturing the horizon as a clock, stars ticking across it. Vega rises there, and Terry sets here. It's like the sky's a giant app, but you can't swipe for help. Miss a star's cue, and you're drifting toward nowhere. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators swore by zenith stars. These are stars that pass directly overhead at specific islands. You're under one now, maybe Altair, and if it's straight up, you're near Tahiti. Sounds cool, but try explaining that to your GPS-obsessed friend. Historians still argue whether zenith stars were a primary tool or just a backup. Could you really trust one dot in the sky to find a dot in the ocean? Yet they did over and over. So maybe the stars were just showing off. You're squinting at the constellations now, feeling a bit out of your league. The Southern Cross points south, its crooked shape like a cosmic arrow. You imagine a navigator teaching you. Follow the cross, but don't get cocky. They track dozens of stars, memorizing their arcs across the night. You chuckle, thinking of your struggle to remember your Wi-Fi password. Navigators paired stars with chants, each verse a reminder of a route. You hum a tune, wondering if Twinkle, Twinkle counts as navigation. Spoiler, it doesn't. The canoe sways, and you notice the crew watching the horizon, not the waves. Stars were their anchors, but they had to know when each one appeared. You picture them timing the night, using the sky like a clock. Dawn's glow might hide the stars, but they'd already set their course. You're impressed, but also a bit dizzy. Keeping 32 star points straight feels like juggling flaming torches. The crew's calm, though, pointing at a low star, maybe serious, guiding you west. You lean back, trusting their skill, the canoe's hulls humming with the sea's pulse. You're starting to see the sky differently, like it's alive, talking to you. Navigators didn't just follow stars, they lived by them, tying seasons and voyages to celestial rhythms. The Pleiades rising meant it was time to sail. Orion's climb signaled storms might be coming. You grin, imagining your weather app trying to compete with that. It's not just science, it's poetry written in light. The stars feel closer now, like old friends. You're not lost, not yet, as long as those lights keep shining, guiding you through the night. You're still swaying on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's gentle waves lulling you as the stars above glitter like a cosmic quilt. The night air's warm, wrapping you in a salty embrace, and you hear soft voices nearby, whispers of a lesson unfolding. You're not alone. A young apprentice, barely a teenager, sits cross-legged on the deck, eyes wide, soaking up wisdom from a weathered navigator. The old master points at the sky, his voice low, guiding the kid through the art of star navigation. You're about to witness how Polynesians passed down their ocean-conquering skills, turned kids into sailors who could outsmart the sea. Ready to feel a bit underqualified? Mainstream history records that Polynesian navigation was an oral tradition, taught through rigorous apprenticeships starting as early as age 10, with training lasting decades. By 1000 CE, master navigators, called wayfinders in some cultures, were training the next generation across islands like Tonga and the Marquesas. You're watching this kid now, his brow furrowed, trying to memorize the arc of a star, maybe Canopus. The master's patient, pointing out its path, explaining how it leads to a speck of land 800 miles away. You wince, remembering your own struggles with algebra homework. This is next-level life or death stuff, and there's no cheat sheet. Here's the quirky tidbit. Apprentices sometimes learned by floating in shallow lagoons blindfolded, to feel wave patterns with their bodies. Picture this kid bobbing in the water, giggling nervously as the master shouts, "Feel the swell, not your lunch." It's like a trust fall with the ocean. Historians still argue whether this was practical or just a quirky rite of passage. Could you really learn navigation by splashing around blind? But it built instinct, and those instincts found islands. So maybe you should try it next time you're at the beach. You lean closer, catching the master's words. He's teaching the kid to read the stars like a story, each constellation a chapter. The apprentice repeats a chant, his voice shaky but determined, listing star pairs that mark a route to Samoa. You're impressed, but also a bit jealous. Your karaoke skills don't compare. Training wasn't just about stars, it was waves, winds, even birds. The master points at a tern flapping overhead, explaining how its flight path might hint at land. You squint, wondering if you'd mistake it for a seagull and end up in Antarctica. The canoe rocks softly, and you notice the kid's hands trembling as he points at a star. The master corrects him gently, no yelling, just a nod. Training was intense but communal, often done on shore first, with sticks and shells laid out to mimic the sky. You picture it, a sandy classroom, kids huddled around, learning to see the ocean in their minds. You chuckle, Imagining your old teachers trying to teach this. Pop quiz. Find Rapa Nui or your fish food. Yeah, you'd have begged for detention instead. You're starting to feel the weight of this moment. The apprentice isn't just learning. He's inheriting a legacy. The master's voice softens, telling stories of past voyages, of storms survived and islands found. It's not just technique, it's courage, trust in the stars, and the canoe you rode in on earlier. You glance at the hulls, remembering their strength, and feel a pang of awe. This kid's future is out there, in the dark, and he's learning to chase it. You settle back, the stars brighter now, their light a promise that knowledge, once shared, never truly fades. You're still drifting on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves whispering beneath you as the stars overhead pulse with ancient stories. The air's thick with salt and mystery, and you hear the crew murmuring, their voices weaving tales that feel alive. You're not just sailing, you're riding the currents of Polynesian myths, stories that didn't just entertain, but steered voyages across the ocean's vastness. These weren't bedtime stories, they were maps, compasses, and courage rolled into one. You're about to sink into the legends that fueled those fearless navigators. So settle in and let the myths carry you. Mainstream history confirms that Polynesian oral traditions, rich with mythology, shaped their navigation culture, with stories recorded across islands by 1000 CE. Gods like Maui, a trickster hero, were said to pull islands from the sea, giving sailors destinations to aim for. You're picturing Maui now, a grinning demigod with a fishhook, tugging up Hawaii like it's no big deal. Navigators told these tales during voyages, using them to recall routes. You lean back, imagining a storyteller's voice, low and rhythmic, describing how Maui lassoed the sun to slow it down, giving sailors longer days to sail. It's not just a story, it's a reminder to trust the sky. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some myths claim stars were ancestors' eyes, watching over the canoe. You glance up, half expecting Orion to wink at you. Navigators would pray to these starry ancestors for guidance, believing they'd nudge the canoe toward land. Historians still argue whether this was spiritual fuel or a clever mnemonic. Did the ancestors really guide, or was it just a way to remember star paths? Either way, you're not arguing with sailors who found Easter Island without a map app. You're swaying with the canoe, the crew's stories pulling you deeper. One tale speaks of Tane, the forest god, who gifted trees for canoes, like the one you're on now, its hulls carved from sacred koa. You run your hand along the wood, feeling its strength, and wonder if Tane's still cheering you on. These myths weren't random. They tied the sea, sky, and land together. A story about a constellation might hide a sailing direction, like how the Pleiades signaled safe voyaging months. You chuckle, thinking your own stories, like that time you navigated a road trip with a dead phone. Don't quite compare. The crew's voices grow softer, recounting a legend of a lost island, Kanahinamoku, a paradise only the bravest could find. You picture it, palm-fringed shores, waves glowing under moonlight. The story's a motivator, pushing sailors to keep going, even when the sea turns mean. You're starting to see how myths were more than fluff, they were survival tools, keeping spirits high during weeks of open water. You try telling yourself a story, something about conquering your inbox, but it's not quite as epic. Maybe you need a demigod or two. You're caught up now, the stars brighter as the myths sink in. Navigators use these stories to teach, too, like the apprentice you saw earlier, memorizing chants that wove legends with star paths. A tale about a hero sailing under Scorpio might mean steer south when Scorpio rises. It's clever, like hiding homework in a comic book. You grin, imagining trying to sell this to your old teachers. Learn navigation through fairy tales. Yeah, they'd have laughed you out of class. But out here, it worked, guiding canoes to lands you're still chasing, one story at a time. You're still cradled by that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves rocking you like a lullaby as the stars above twinkle with quiet wisdom. The air's warm, scented with salt, and your hands brush against something rough, a small, intricately carved shell map tucked beside you. You're about to explore the tools Polynesian navigators used, not just their minds or myths, but tangible objects like stick charts and stone markers that helped them conquer the ocean's vastness. These weren't fancy gadgets, but they were genius in their simplicity, turning the sea into a puzzle you could hold. Let's dig into these ocean-born treasures. Mainstream history notes that Polynesian navigators used physical tools like shell and stick charts, documented across Micronesia and Polynesia by 1000 CE, to represent ocean swells and island locations. You're holding one now, a fragile lattice of palm sticks tied with coconut fiber, shells knotted at key points. Each stick traces a wave pattern, each shell an island, maybe Rarotonga or Guam. You turn it over, feeling its weight, lighter than your phone, but heavier with meaning. Navigators studied these on shore, memorizing how swells bent around land, then left the charts behind, carrying the knowledge in their heads. You're impressed, but also a bit stressed. Losing your car keys is bad enough. Imagine misplacing an ocean map. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators used starstones, rocks placed on beaches to mark where key stars rose. You picture a weathered stone, etched with a notch, pointing to where Arcturus climbs. It's like a prehistoric post-it note. Historians still argue whether these were widespread or just local quirks. Did every island have them, or were they a one-off? Either way, you're not betting against sailors who found Hawaii with rocks and vibes. You're tracing the stick chart's lines now, trying to decode it. The sticks aren't random. They mimic how waves refract near islands, like ripples in a pond. You imagine a navigator teaching that apprentice you saw earlier, pointing at the chart. See this curve? That's Fiji's shadow in the sea. It's not just art, it's science, mapping an ocean too big for paper. You chuckle, thinking of your GPS app crashing mid-road trip. These charts were backup for the mental maps you explored before, a way to practice when clouds hid the stars. You try picturing waves in your head, but it's like solving a Rubik's Cube in the dark. The canoe sways, and you notice other tools, a gourd filled with water, a notch stick for tracking days. Navigators weren't just stargazers, they were engineers, using whatever the islands gave them. You pick up a polished shell, maybe used to sight stars on the horizon. It's smooth, cool in your palm, and you wonder how many hands held it before. The crew's quiet, one sailor adjusting the sail with a rope you recognize from the canoe's lashings. Everything's connected, tools, myths, the canoe itself, all part of the same dance with the sea. You're starting to feel the rhythm of these tools, how they grounded the navigators' wild leaps across the Pacific. They weren't magic, just practical, like the double hulls keeping you afloat. You think back to those starry ancestors' eyes from the myths, wondering if they guided the hands that tied these sticks. It's humbling, making your smartwatch feel like a toy. The stars are still there, the canoe gliding forward, and you tuck the shell map beside you, trusting it'll lead you closer to land, one knot at a time. You're still clinging to that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves tossing you like a cosmic salad as the stars above flicker with indifference. The airs turn sharp, heavy with the scent of an approaching storm, and dark clouds are swallowing the sky, blotting out those trusty constellations you were just getting cozy with. You're about to face the kind of tempest that tests even the toughest Polynesian navigators, where instinct and grit matter more than any star or stick chart. The sea's getting cranky, and you're wondering if that spirit seat from earlier comes with a life jacket. Hold tight, this is where courage gets real. Mainstream history records that Polynesian navigators, sailing across the Pacific by 1000 CE, faced frequent storms, with evidence of their resilience found in oral histories and archaeological remains of wrecked canoes on remote atolls. You're gripping the canoe's edge now, the wind howling, waves slapping the hulls like they've got a personal grudge. Navigators didn't panic. They leaned into their training, using wave patterns and wind shifts to keep their course. You're trying to stay calm, but the canoe's rocking hard, and you're half convinced you're auditioning for a disaster movie. The crew's focused, though, one sailor lashing down a tarp while another scans the horizon, trusting the sea's clues over the missing stars. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators claimed they could taste a storm's direction by licking the air. You stick out your tongue, catching salt and rain, but all you taste is regret. It's wild, right? Historians still argue whether this was a real skill or just sailor swagger. Could you really sense a gale's path with a quick lick? But these folks survive typhoons, so maybe your taste buds need a refresher. You're soaked now, the rain pelting your face as the canoe bucks. Navigators relied on their bodies in storms, feeling the swells rhythm through the hulls, just like you felt those mental maps earlier. You lie flat, mimicking them, sensing the waves' pulse. It's disorienting, but there's a pattern. Long swells from the west, short ones crisscrossing. You imagine the apprentice from before, trembling but watching, learning to trust his gut when the sky betrayed him. You chuckle nervously, thinking your gut's only good for picking pizza toppings, not surviving squalls. The crew's chanting now, a low hum cutting through the storm's roar. It's not just morale, it's a memory aid, recalling routes from myths like Maui's battles with the sea. You join in, mumbling nonsense, hoping it helps. Navigators knew storms could push them off course, but they'd adjust, using the wind's new angle to guess their position. You're impressed, but also a bit seasick, wondering how they kept lunch down. The canoe's double hulls, those marvels you admired, are earning their keep, steadying you as waves try to flip the boat like a pancake. You're starting to respect the sea's power, but also the navigator's defiance. They'd watch for signs, a break in the clouds, a shift in the swell, to steer back on track. You squint, spotting a faint star peeking through, maybe Sirius, and feel a flicker of hope. The storm's not forever, and neither is your panic. You think back to those stick charts, their curves mimicking these waves, and realize the navigators were ready for this chaos. The canoe surges forward, rain easing, and you settle back, heart pounding but grateful. The stars are returning, and you're still afloat, carried by courage older than the storm itself. You're still aboard that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves now calmer after that storm, lapping gently against the hulls like an apology. The stars are back, twinkling above, and the air's fresh, tinged with a faint sweetness you can't place. You're squinting at the horizon, heart still racing from the tempest, when a bird, a lone tern, flaps overhead, its wings catching the moonlight. The crew stirs, pointing excitedly, and you realize you're close to land. You're about to learn how Polynesian navigators read nature's subtle signs, birds, clouds, even the sea's color, to find islands whispering home across miles of water. Let's see if you can spot the clues. Mainstream history confirms that Polynesians, navigating by 1000 CE, used environmental cues like bird migrations and cloud formations to locate islands, with oral traditions describing these techniques across the Pacific. You're watching that turn now, its flight path steady, heading toward an invisible speck of land. Navigators knew birds like terns and frigate birds rarely flew far from shore, maybe 50 miles tops. Spot one, and you're near an island. You grin, imagining telling your birdwatching aunt this trick. She'd probably try it in her backyard and end up at the neighbor's barbecue. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators swore they could smell land before seeing it. You sniff the air, catching that sweet hint again. Maybe flowers or damp earth. It's faint but real. They'd claim the scent of vegetation carried on the wind, a perfumed postcard from an atoll. Historians still argue whether this was reliable or just wishful sniffing. Could you really nose your way to Tahiti? But these sailors found pinprick islands, so maybe your allergies are just holding you back. You're scanning the horizon now, the crew pointing at a low cloud, tinged green underneath. Navigators called these land clouds, formed when warm island air rose, condensing into puffs that reflected lagoon colors. You squint, seeing the faint emerald glow, and feel a thrill. It's like the islands waving at you. The sea's changing too, less deep blue, more turquoise, as coral reefs scatter light. You lean over, peering into the water, half expecting a neon sign saying land, 10 miles. You chuckle, thinking your vacation beach trips never required this much detective work. The crew's buzzing, one sailor tossing a bit of bread to another turn circling above. Navigators watched bird behavior closely. Flocking birds meant land was near, lone ones farther out. You're trying to keep up, but it's like decoding a nature documentary in real time. They'd also note wave patterns, like those you felt in the storm, looking for reflected swells bouncing off islands. You try sensing it, but the canoe's gentle rock feels more like a nap invitation. The crew's unfazed, pointing at a driftwood log bobbing nearby. Another sign lands upwind, carrying debris your way. You're starting to feel the island's pull, like it's calling you. Navigators combined these signs with the star paths and myths you've been following, weaving them into a mental checklist. Birds, clouds, smells, waves. It's overwhelming, but also beautiful, like the ocean's whispering directions. You think back to that stick chart, its curves mimicking these swells, and realize it all connects. You're not just sailing, you're reading the world. The stars above, the birds ahead, the canoe beneath, they're all guiding you home. You settle back, the sweet air stronger now, and trust the island's waiting, just beyond the next wave. You're still gliding on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves nudging you forward as the stars above shimmer like they're cheering you on. The air's thick with that sweet, earthy scent you caught earlier, and the horizon's glowing faintly, a promise of land just out of sight. You're not alone on this voyage. Beside you stands a woman, her eyes sharp, scanning the sea with quiet confidence. She's a navigator, defying the norms of a male-dominated craft, steering this canoe with the same skill as any master wayfinder. You're about to meet the unsung women who sailed by stars, leading their people across the ocean's vastness. Get ready to be humbled. Mainstream history acknowledges that women navigators, though rare, existed in Polynesian societies, with oral traditions from islands like the Marquesas and Tahiti mentioning their roles by 1000 CE. You're watching her now, adjusting the sail with a steady hand, her voice low as she calls out a star's position, maybe Vega, rising in the east. She's not just crew, she's the one everyone's looking to, her knowledge of waves and winds as sharp as any man's. You're a bit awestruck, remembering how you struggled to parallel park last week. This woman's parking a canoe on an atoll 1,000 miles away. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some female navigators were said to use braided hair as a wind gauge, letting strands flutter to judge breeze direction. You watch her tuck a loose strand behind her ear, wondering if it's doubling as a tool. It's oddly poetic, right? Historians still argue whether this was common or just a romanticized tale. Could a braid really outdo a weather vane? But she's steering straight, so maybe your ponytail's got untapped potential. You're leaning closer, catching her calm instructions to the crew. Women navigators often learned in secret, shadowing fathers or brothers, like that apprentice you saw earlier, because tradition favored men. Yet, some rose to lead, their skill undeniable. You picture her as a girl, sneaking to watch lessons under moonlight, memorizing star paths while others slept. It's inspiring, but also a bit unfair. Imagine acing a test, but not getting credit because of who you are. You chuckle, thinking your own workplace drama seems tame compared to proving yourself on open water. The canoe sways, and she points at a cloud, its green tint signaling land. Just like you noticed before, her training mirrors the men's years of chance, wave reading, even that blindfolded lagoon trick you laughed about. But she's added her own flair, maybe a keener eye for bird patterns or a knack for sensing currents. You try mimicking her, squinting at a turn overhead, but you're pretty sure it's just judging your paddle skills. The crew respects her, no questions asked. Their trust forged in storms like the one you survived. You're starting to see her not just as a navigator, but as a leader, binding the canoe's spirit to the stars. You're caught up in her story, the sea's rhythm syncing with her quiet strength. Women like her carried families, crops, even myths like Maui's across the Pacific, ensuring new homes thrived. You think back to that stick chart, its knots tying islands together, and realize she's a knot too, connecting past and future. The stars seem brighter now, as if they're proud. You settle back, the canoe steady under her command, and feel a quiet pride yourself. Land's near, and she's leading you there, one star at a time. You're still rocking on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves humming beneath you as the stars overhead glow like tiny campfires. The air's alive with that floral scent of land, and you hear laughter, crew members swapping goods, their voices warm with camaraderie. You're not just sailing to an island. You're part of a vast network where Polynesian navigators linked distant shores through trade, carrying not just cargo but stories and bonds that wove their world together. You're about to dive into the bustling trade routes that made these voyages more than survival. They were the heartbeat of a culture. Ready to barter? Mainstream history shows that by 1000 CE, Polynesian trade networks stretched across the Pacific, connecting islands like Samoa, Tonga, and the Society Islands, with archaeological finds like obsidian tools and pottery tracing these exchanges. You're watching the crew now, one sailor unpacking a bundle of taro, another showing off a polished adze. They're prepping to trade when you hit land, maybe swapping for fish hooks or feathers. You're tempted to offer your soggy sneakers, but they'd probably laugh you off the canoe. These routes weren't random. Navigators planned them, using those star paths you followed to link markets across thousands of miles. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traders used gift exchanges to seal deals, tossing in a song or dance as a bonus. You picture a sailor belting out a chant while handing over a basket of breadfruit, like a Polynesian infomercial. Historians still argue whether this was diplomacy or just flair. Did a good tune really clinch the trade? But it built trust, and you're not messing with folks who sailed 2,000 miles for a deal. You're leaning over, eyeing the cargo, baskets of yams, rolls of woven mats. Navigators didn't just carry food. They moved ideas, like how to carve canoes or tell myths like Maui's. You imagine landing on an island, greeted by locals eager for your goods and your stories. It's like a floating farmer's market, but with higher stakes. You chuckle, thinking your last online order didn't require dodging storms or reading clouds like you saw earlier. Trade voyages needed every skill, stars, waves, even that female navigator's steady hand. Because a wrong turn meant no marketplace, just more sea. The crew's joking now, one sailor mimicking a bad trade where someone got stuck with a leaky gourd. You grin, picturing your own impulse buys. Yep, that discount blender's still gathering dust. But these trades were lifeblood, spreading crops like sweet potatoes across islands, ensuring no one starved. Navigators memorized trade winds, timing voyages for calm seasons, guided by stars like the Pleiades. You glance up, spotting their faint cluster, and feel connected to this web. Islands weren't isolated. They were family, tied by canoes and courage. You're starting to feel the pulse of this network, how trade wasn't just stuff, it was glue, holding Polynesia together. You think back to that stick chart, it's knots like trade routes, linking dots in the ocean. The crew's packing goods tighter now, the canoe steady, land sent stronger. You're not just a passenger, you're part of a chain, carrying stories and taro to the next shore. The stars wink, the waves hum, and you settle back, dreaming of the island market waiting, where your canoe's arrival means more than just a sail. It's a reunion. You're still swaying on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves cradling you as the stars above dim with the first hints of dawn. The air's heavy with that sweet island scent, but there's a weight in your chest, a quiet sadness settling in. You're thinking about how the Polynesian Navigators' art, those star paths, wave readings, and myths you've been chasing started to fade, like a song half forgotten. You're about to drift through the slow decline of this knowledge, as colonial powers swept in, disrupting the ways that tied islands together. It's a heavy moment, so let's ease into it gently. Mainstream history notes that by the 18th century, European colonization, starting with explorers like Captain Cook in 1778, began eroding Polynesian navigation traditions across the Pacific. You're picturing a harbor now, foreign ships dwarfing your canoe, their crews scoffing at primitive ways. Navigators, once revered, were sidelined as compasses and charts replaced stars and chants. You feel the canoe rock, as if it senses the shift. The trade networks you saw thriving, carrying taro and stories, shrank as colonial ports demanded cash crops, not community. You wince, imagining swapping that polished adze for a rusty nail. Not exactly a fair trade. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some navigators hid their skills, teaching in secret to dodge colonial bans. You picture an elder, like that master from earlier, whispering star paths to kids under a banyan tree, away from prying eyes. It's like an underground navigation club. Historians still argue whether this preserved enough knowledge or just delayed the loss. Could whispered lessons really outlast empires? But those secret sessions kept a spark alive, and you're rooting for them. You're staring at the horizon, where an island silhouette is forming, its palms swaying. The old ways weren't just navigation, they were identity, tying people to the sea and each other. Colonists brought schools that taught longitude, not wave patterns, and missions that swapped Maui's myths for new stories. You try chanting one of those navigation songs, but it feels hollow, like singing karaoke with no lyrics. You chuckle softly, thinking your own culture's lost a few traditions too. When's the last time you wrote a letter by hand? Still, this loss stings deeper, cutting off a lifeline to the stars. The crew's quieter now, their laughter from the trade talk's gone. You notice one sailor tracing a stick chart, maybe teaching himself what elders once sang. Colonial rule didn't just take land, it took confidence, making navigators doubt their own genius. You think back to that female navigator, her steady hand, and wonder if she faced even harsher scrutiny. The sea's still here, though, whispering its old rhythms, and you lie back, feeling its pulse like those navigators did in storms. Some islands banned canoes outright, forcing reliance on foreign ships. You grimace, picturing your canoe grounded, its sails rotting. It's like benching a star athlete. You're starting to feel the ache of this fade, but there's a stubborn hope, too. Those secret lessons, those whispered chants, they're seeds waiting. You glance at the stars, still there despite the dawn, and think of that apprentice, his eyes wide with wonder. The knowledge isn't gone, just sleeping, buried in stories and the sea's endless song. The canoe glides on, the island closer now, and you hold on to that spark, knowing the stars haven't forgotten their navigators, even if the world did for a while. You're still nestled in that double-hulled canoe, The Pacific's waves rocking you gently as the stars above fade into a soft pre-dawn glow. The island scent, sweet earthy, grows stronger, and you hear new voices, not the crew's, but a modern hum of excitement. You're no longer in the past. You're sailing with today's Polynesians, who are reviving the art of star navigation, rebuilding canoes, and chasing the sea's ancient paths. You're about to join this renaissance, where old ways are reborn, and the ocean feels like home again. Let's glide into this hopeful tide. Mainstream history highlights the Polynesian Voyaging Society, founded in 1973, which sparked a revival of traditional navigation, with canoes like Hakulei sailing from Hawaii to Tahiti using only stars and waves by 1976. You're on a similar canoe now, its hulls carved from modern timber, but echoing those koa giants you rode before. The crew's a mix, elders chanting star paths, young sailors checking swells, even a descendant of that female navigator, her braid catching the breeze. You grin, feeling the vibe, like a cultural festival on water. This isn't just a boat trip, it's a reclamation, proving the old ways still work. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some modern navigators use apps to learn star positions, blending tech with tradition. You picture a sailor sneaking a peek at a star chart on their phone, then quickly hiding it like it's homework. Historians still argue whether this tech-tinged revival dilutes the art or strengthens it. Can an app really teach you to feel the sea? But when Hakulei crossed 2,500 miles without GPS, you're betting on the stars, not the screen. You're swaying with the canoe, watching a young navigator point at Arcturus, just like you learned earlier. They're trained by masters like Nainoa Thompson, who studied under elders to revive the star compass. You try mimicking their focus, squinting at the horizon, but you're distracted by a turn overhead. Yep, lands near, like those birds signaled before. The crew's chanting now, a song you recognize from those myths, maybe Maui's fishhook tale. It's not just nostalgia, it's a map guiding you to an atoll. You chuckle, thinking your playlist got nothing on this. The revival's not just about sailing, it's cultural glue, like those trade networks you saw. Communities rebuild canoes together, weaving sails, carving hulls, just like centuries ago. You picture villages buzzing, kids learning chants instead of scrolling. It's healing, stitching back what colonization frayed. You think of that secret teaching under the banyan tree, how it kept the spark alive. Now that spark's a flame. Schools teach navigation, festivals launch canoes, and elders pass batons to youth. You try humming a chant, but it's more off-key karaoke than wayfinding. Still, you're caught up in the pride. You're starting to feel the sea's pulse, like those navigators who tasted storms or red waves. The canoe's steady, the stars still guiding, and you spot land, a green smudge under a cloud, just like those land clouds you spotted. The revival's proof. The knowledge never died, just slept. You think back to that stick chart, its knots linking islands, and see this crew as new knots tying past to present. The dawn's breaking, the island's close, and you settle back, awed by this rebirth, carried by stars and a canoe that sailed through time. You're still aboard that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves rocking you gently as the dawn paints the sky in soft pinks and golds. The island scent sweet like crushed flowers wraps around you, and the crew's voices hum with anticipation, pointing at a green smudge on the horizon. You're not just sailing, you're pondering a mystery that's haunted scholars for centuries. When and how did Polynesians first reach these distant shores? You're about to dive into the debates, the clues, and the gaps in the story of those first voyages, where stars and courage wrote history. Let's drift into this enigma. Mainstream history suggests Polynesians began their Pacific migrations around 3000 BCE, starting from Southeast Asia and reaching islands like Hawaii and New Zealand by 1000 CE, based on archaeological finds like lapida pottery. You're picturing those first sailors now, their canoes, maybe like yours, loaded with taro and hope, chasing stars like Arcturus. But when did they start? Some say 1500 BCE, others push it back further, citing ancient tools on Fiji. You lean back, the canoe's rhythm soothing, and wonder how anyone dared sail into the unknown. Your last road trip took 3 wrong turns with GPS. Imagine crossing an ocean with just a hunch. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some legends claim Polynesians followed golden ants on logs, tiny insects drifting on debris that hinted at far-off lands. You squint at a nearby driftwood, half expecting an ant to wave. It's a stretch, right? Historians still argue whether this was myth or a real clue. Could bugs really guide a voyage? But those sailors found Easter Island, so maybe you shouldn't scoff at creepy crawlies. You're scanning the horizon, the island clearer now, its palms swaying. Scholars debate the how-to, deliberate voyages or lucky drifts. Some say navigators planned every trip, using those star compasses you learned about, while others think storms, like the one you survived, blew canoes off course, leading to accidental discoveries. You picture a lost sailor, washed up on a new shore, claiming it was the plan all along. You chuckle, thinking your own happy accidents usually involve spilling coffee, not finding islands. The crew's quiet, one sailor tracing a shell map like the one you held earlier. Evidence is tricky, carbon-dated bones, sweet potato DNA, even linguistic links, points to Polynesians reaching South America, maybe 1200 CE. But was it one trip or many? You try piecing it together, but it's like a jigsaw with half the pieces missing. The stars above, now fading, feel like witnesses, silent but knowing. Navigators use tools, myths, and guts, like that female navigator's steady hand, to cross oceans. Yet, the first voyages remain foggy, a puzzle no one's fully cracked. You're caught up in the mystery, the sea's pulse sinking with your thoughts. Did they sail for trade, like those networks you saw, or to flee danger? The canoe glides closer to land, and you think of that apprentice, learning under starlight. Maybe the first navigators were like him, young and bold, chasing a story like Maui's to find new homes. The debates, dates, routes, intentions fade into the waves' hum. You settle back, the island's green now vivid, and feel the question linger, soft as the dawn, unanswered but alive. You're still on that double-hulled canoe, the Pacific's waves carrying you closer to the island. Its green hills, now sharp against the dawn's golden glow. The air's thick with the scent of frangipani, and the crew's voices are soft, almost reverent, as they point to the shore. You're not just arriving, you're reflecting on the Polynesian navigators' legacy, their courage and genius etched in the stars above, in the canoe beneath you, in the sea itself. You're about to wrap up this journey, letting their story settle into your bones as the island welcomes you home. Let's linger in this moment, under the fading stars. Mainstream history celebrates Polynesians as the greatest navigators of their time, colonizing the Pacific's vast triangle, Hawaii, New Zealand, Easter Island, by 1000 CE, a feat unmatched until modern times. You're feeling the canoe's rhythm now, its hull steady like those you marveled at, built to dance with the sea. Their legacy isn't just in the islands they found, but in the knowledge they wove, stars, waves, myths like Maui's, all guiding you here. You glance up, spotting the Southern Cross low on the horizon, and feel a connection, like the stars are nodding back. Your phone's map app could never compete with this. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some Polynesian communities still name their kids after stars, like Hakule, the star of gladness that inspired the revival canoe. You picture a kid running on a beach, their name tying them to the sky. Historians still argue whether this naming keeps navigation alive or just honors the past. Does a name carry the sea's secrets? But as you near the shore, you're betting those kids feel the ocean's pull, just like you do now. You're leaning forward, the island's details unfolding, palm fronds swaying, waves kissing coral. The Navigators' legacy lives in their descendants, like that modern crew you sailed with, reviving the old ways. You think back to the apprentice, his eyes wide under starlight, and the female navigator, her steady hand. Their courage, their tools like that stick chart, their trade networks, all threads in a tapestry stretching across time. You chuckle softly, imagining trying to explain this to your friends. Yeah, I sailed by stars, no big deal. They'd think you'd lost it. The crew's packing up now, securing taro bundles, their laughter echoing those trade voyages. You're struck by how this legacy endured, despite colonial shadows. Those secret lessons under banyan trees, the Hakule revival, they're proof the stars never stop guiding. You try humming a chant, one of those route markers from the myths, but it's more mumble than melody. Still, it feels right, like you're part of the story. The island's close, its shore a crescent of white sand, and you're ready to step ashore, carrying the navigator's spirit with you. You're starting to feel the journey's end, the sea's hum softening. The stars, the canoe, the myths, they're not just history. They're a reminder of what humans can do with grit and a good story. You think of that golden ant legend, quirky but bold, and smile. The navigator's legacy is courage, etched in every wave you've crossed. You settle back, the canoe gliding to shore, the world quiet except for the sea's whisper and your steady breath. Wind down, and now, as the canoe kisses the shore, you feel the sand beneath you warm and soft, the island's heartbeat slow and steady. The waves hush, their rhythm fading into a gentle sigh, like a lullaby sung by the sea itself. You're safe, wrapped in the glow of the stars' final light, their stories lingering in your mind, soft as a dream. The navigator's courage, their myths, their canoes, they're with you, tucked into your thoughts, ready to guide you into sleep. Let the island's breeze carry you now, its scent of flowers and salt a quiet promise of rest. You're not lost, you're home, the ocean's arms rocking you gently, the stars above whispering goodnight. Drift now, let the world slip away, and rest in the peace of this ancient endless sea. Good night and sweet dreams.